Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Test, Learn, Grow. Today, we're talking about the top 5 things we are focused on in higher education marketing this year. These are 5 very specific things that we curated with our education teams based on our client base, things that they're asking us about, things that we're actively testing for them, and things that we know all of you listening should be focusing on as well. So, what are those 5 things that we're testing? Well, first, we're going to talk about testing new platforms with the sinking ship known as Facebook. All impending doom intended there. And we'll get to more on that. The importance of leading into machine learning and artificial intelligence and not shying away from it. Also, the importance of building a solid awareness measurement strategy and the importance of nurturing leads beyond just email and measuring all the impact there. And then we'll wrap with a discussion on creative and the importance of investing in high quality video and user generated content and how we can layer all that into our performance marketing campaigns. So, all that and more on today's episode. And to help me do that, I'm joined by 3 guests. We've got Jenna Bludorn, account director for the education vertical, and our 2 team leads in the education vertical, Jeff Roebuck and Kiefer Kopko. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Kiefer, we're going to start with you and that very ominous sinking ship known as Facebook. Talk to us about that. How are we testing new platforms because of everything that's going on in Facebook?
Absolutely. So I think, over the last 5 to 10 years, Facebook has become, Meta honestly has become kind of a cornerstone in digital marketing for a lot of companies. We see this pretty consistently, especially when we look at historical numbers. For a long time, it was a really solid driver of lead volume at relatively low costs. Quality was always a mixed bag, but it certainly was, something that could be workable for an admissions team. Over the last couple of years, I would say, especially since the pandemic, but even a little bit beforehand, we really started to notice just declining results. Cost per lead was going up. The quality of the leads was really shrinking. We were really having a tough time with enrollments. One of the things that we noticed is that there are just so many more platforms. Snapchat's user base has been growing since 2010 area. TikTok came onto the scene in a big way during the pandemic. And there are things like Discovery, which are new ad platforms put out by Google, and they all serve a similar type of spot where it is a feed-based advertising. It is really focused more on prospecting and focused more on generating conversions. And as a result, Facebook isn't the cornerstone that it used to be. We've seen firsthand, um, once we started to test these platforms, although they are not at the same level in terms of lead generation, they are great at delivering brand awareness, generating knowledge of who you are, what you stand for, what are your unique aspects of your school, and what can get people to go there. There's also a major benefit in specifically in TikTok and Snapchat when it comes to targeting users under 18. There's a lot of new regulations, a lot of privacy concerns, but we've seen firsthand that Snapchat and TikTok, just purely from a CPM basis, is the most efficient way. If you're trying to target users under that 18 demographic, there's still several limitations you need to consider, but certainly it seems like that's where they are. And then Discovery, which is a Google-based feed-based ad platform, it serves on YouTube, Gmail, and the regular Google page. Is definite. It has the same type of advertising as Facebook used to, although you have to consider there are more people on YouTube, Gmail, and Google than there ever have been on any of Meta's products. So now we have the same type of advertising, a much bigger audience, much bigger scale. So that's where we're seeing a lot of actually generating those costs per lead. So there is no silver bullet yet that we've found, but it requires a lot more of look at your media mix, look at what are you trying to achieve through all these different platforms, and go from there. And Meta still has a place. It's not quite the cornerstone it used to be.
Yeah, like we laughed when I previewed it. That was total clickbait, right? The sinking ship, not as
Yep.
Facebook. But really what you described there is it's really not just about one ship, right? We've got a fleet between all the different platforms and everything's got their place. And certainly it's just not taking up as much of the market as it used to be because of everything you just said. So you talked about it broad, which is good. Do you have any specific examples about how we've tested exactly what you just said for the clients and any just real world examples of what the results have been?
Yeah, so back in summer and fall of 2022, We actually did a very calculated test focused on advertising in Snapchat, TikTok, and Reddit, actually, trying to determine what is the actual brand awareness impact. And it was a limited test, so we had to make some considerations about, what is the most effective thing we can learn from this test, given the time frame and the budget. So we decided to focus on, what is the overall lift on website traffic and the value in website traffic. Um, Certainly, if we had longer and we had a bigger budget, we would look at, what's the impact on inquiries, what's the impact on enrollments, and we're actually gearing up for a test like that. What we found is that through what is called a counterfactual prediction, it is actually based on a Google case study that was published, basically predicting, what traffic would be like, and then intervening with the new campaigns and seeing what it actually did in comparison to the projection that we originally made. At the end of the day, it shook out to that we were able to directly link TikTok and Snapchat in particular, less so Reddit. I'm not talking bad on Reddit, but it has a little bit of ways to go. Snapchat and TikTok in particular generate, I think, a 15% lift in overall direct traffic to the website. So people, actually typing in the URL and going to the website. We worked with members of our data COE, our data scientist, Cal Toljan. He put together the model and he made a lot of considerations for, making sure we're considering what events are they having that could be influencing the overall traffic? What other advertising are they doing? So a lot of considerations went into it to give us a very clear, this is the lift and this is the metric, and we're continuing to test and retest that.
So that's a great example, and it it's funny because it takes that, right? It takes the data and those examples, and people have to hear that over and over again for them to actually lean into it and not shy away from it, which makes me think of another topic that I know you work closely on, which is machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? Similarly, first time it comes on the scene, just like when TikTok or Snapchat came on the scene, people don't want to touch it because it's unknown, but it's important and it's a factor today, right? So how can people start to lean into that more versus away from it?
Yeah. So I think the first podcast I was actually ever on was about Facebook consolidation specifically and
Yeah.
campaign consolidation generally. That's been the big hallmark for us. I would say, over the last 4 years, especially since I came on board at Level Agency. It started with using automated bidding, and then the automated bidding moved into, okay, to use automated bidding effectively, we need campaign consolidation, which means, leveraging the automation to determine where we can generate conversions, where we can generate leads, and continue to feed that information. Now we've taken that so much further. Now there are things like offline conversion tracking and value-based bidding that we can incorporate into our automated bidding models to give it more information to let it bid smarter. Campaign consolidation is still a big one. I always tell my clients, let's not let finance dictate the way our campaigns are arranged, because a lot of the ways that we build campaigns are, well, we have to make sure that we have an accrual sheet at the end of the month that can specifically call out where we're spending money for what campuses, and I completely understand that, but sometimes it can really hurt performance. And then most recently, there has been a pretty massive shift in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence, especially in regards to creative. I'm sure most people have heard about Performance Max. Certainly, a lot of questions around Performance Max and its viability, its capabilities, and it's something we're testing pretty aggressively. But even looking at things like, how are people using responsive search ads? How are we using dynamics or responsive display ads? Looking at, there are options for dynamic search ads where you effectively give Google a URL and say, make my ads, make my keywords, call it a day. And those things are scary for a lot of people. I think the biggest hurdle I reach a lot is, you know, how much insight can we have on what's actually performing? Can compliance review what this copy is going to look like? There's a lot of concerns around, we need to we need to keep a tight leash on what is our messaging going out into the market, right? And when you get into these automated systems and these dynamic systems, that gets really scary because you don't have as much control. There's also some concerns about you're not learning as much because you can't decide, okay, this CTA works better than this CTA, and here's the data behind it. It becomes a sort of black box. And I appreciate that concern 100% because I'm very similar. But sometimes you have to balance that against what are the results and what are we actually getting out of it. And if it's a better cost per enrollment, if it's more enrollments, you have to balance that out against, being in a little bit of a at the edge of your seat.
Yeah, you just mentioned data, and so that's a great segue to just data as a topic and a couple of the points we want to draw on today. So Jeff, I'm going to bring it over to you, and the ability to get into data so you can see into the black box and actually measure the effectiveness of our work is huge at every stage of the funnel. But let's start at the top with awareness, right? How are we defining awareness measurement? What place does it have in the marketing strategy, and how are we measuring that with data sources right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best conversation to have about this be 3 or 4 years ago was all about attribution measurement, view through click activity, view through conversion activity. What are the best display ads to get somebody to eventually go to your website, to eventually convert to a lead? When's the last time you on purpose clicked on a display ad, right? But it absolutely has an impact on how you think about companies and who comes top of mind when you have a problem to solve, right? You may not even realize it, but it's absolutely happening. And how do we track? Well, now that iOS is blocking for like 95% of cross app cookie tracking, and Chrome is phasing out cookie tracking, all of that requires some of that technical tracking systems that are being blocked, and people are getting more savvy at preventing. So how do you measure the indirectly measurable, right? And so this is when you don't get creative, but you expand your understanding of what these measurement strategies mean, and you set your expectations appropriately, right? It can be as simple and as classic as a holdout test. Let me run these OTT video campaigns in these 5 states, and in these other 5 comparable states, I won't run it there. And let's measure what happens to my overall business in those regions. It can be that simple. You can do a time over time test, controlling for seasonality and events like Kiefer was talking about. Or you could do something where you can even split an audience. 50% of the audience, I will show the ads in the same geo, another 50% I won't, and see what the differences are there. And then you can measure the direct impact. But then you can also do a media mix model, which is not as direct as an attribution measurement strategy would be, but those are much less reliable today than they were even a couple of years ago. And they will continue to be less reliable. Google won't admit to that. They're modeling out what your performance looks like, and they're getting pretty good at modeling that stuff out. But it's really difficult when you're doing something that's not directly attributable. Um, but the media mix modeling allows you to say, of all of the different independent variables that are happening or all the different things that are happening in my marketing, in my control as well as outside my control, whether it's market forces or a sale that I have or a scholarship I have or a new program launch, of all of these things, what is having the greatest impact on my performance? And you measure it by combining all of your data, and you say, Facebook, Instagram had a 5% lift in your sales that's not attributed to direct. OTT had a 15% lift in your sales. Search had a negative 10%. And it's a zero sum model, right? So it is tricky, and you need somebody to have the forethought and set the expectation appropriately for how we're measuring these things. There are other tools as well. Jenna's done a million lift studies in her life, I feel like, through YouTube and Facebook. But the essential core of this is, don't just set it, say, hey, my sales went up, it worked. Or, hey, my sales went down, it didn't work. Or my student generation. I'm talking more broadly than I need to because I'm on an education podcast. So my leads went up on my website, therefore it worked. Or leads are down 15%. This is garbage. Let's spend it somewhere else. Like, instead of doing that, actually get scientific and set that expectation before you start the test. So don't just backpedal and say, let me get real creative with how I'm going to measure the success of this thing. Before you start the test, agree on, okay, well, how do we know the test will work or not work, and set those standards, right? We have a failure metric as well as a success metric. Check in 2 weeks after launch, 4 weeks after launch. We're regularly monitoring these things.
So as we move further down, right, all that we talked about is more awareness. As we move towards the bottom of the funnel, so to speak, and we get into things that might take us out of the advertising platforms and into things like email to nurture leads. Can you share some examples of lead nurturing campaigns that we're doing right now in higher ed, and how we're testing in that arena as well as in performance marketing? I give you
Yeah, I
a
mean, so our job at Level, hey, I'm selling us. Our job does not stop at the generation of the lead. We're really all about generating the enroll, as we so crassly put, butts in seats. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get those students, whether you're online or ground, we're trying to get students to come to your institution, start their courses, and complete and to graduate, right? So beyond email, beyond calling them 5 times a day to get a lead to come and enroll or to apply or whatever it is, you have many other tactics. You have email is the most common digital tactic, probably, I would say, for these things. But you can also, for very inexpensive media costs, you can create custom creative, custom advertising, custom landing pages that encourages people not just to become a lead, but to target those leads and to convert them into applicants, convert them into enrollments, right? You can have creative. We're actively doing this right now. You can have creative that either calls out, this is why you should trust our institution. These are all our value props, and a little bit dig deeper. Maybe it's the day in the life. Maybe the most common, you base the creative off of the most common barriers of entry for students. So if they're worried about cost, your lead nurturing is what we call it. Your lead nurturing efforts are all about financial aid programs and grants and scholarships you guys have available that people generally don't know about. Their concern is, I don't know if I can fit this into my really busy adult schedule. Then it's all about a day in the life for a student, right? What is it? You wake up, you go to work, and in your bus commute to work, you're checking on your course load when you take a lunch break, and for 30 minutes you do your homework. Great. It's really about meeting, just like every good advertising, it's meeting your audience where they are. And you absolutely, for very inexpensive compared to marketing, very inexpensive costs, meet them in social, them in display, email as well, right? But take the same concepts of email, apply it to these digital channels, and you could go really far with very small advertising dollars, as long as you have the right creative to encourage them to go further down the funnel until they become a student. And you can even run student retention. If you have really poor student retention, you can run advertisements that call out your student success team or alumni videos talking about the graduation process, or just inspire them to keep going, right? These things can have a really profound impact. In general, we see anywhere from a 20 to 60% lift. 60 is very high, 20 to 60% lift in enroll rates when we're deploying these tactics versus when we're just doing the standard calling them a million times and emailing.
So speaking of creative, Jenna, you've been waiting patiently to pop in, but I know you've got an opinion on this, especially when it comes to some of your favorite platforms with TikTok and all the research I know you're doing there in your life, even outside of Level. But how important is it that institutions are investing in high quality video of their own, but also in curating user generated content from their students?
Yeah. So all of the things that Jeff talked about and the keeper talked about, we can't do without high quality creative. So if you want to do these strategies, you really have to start at that creative base. Because if you're just running the same creative that you ran in feed in Facebook, but just copying and pasting that over to TikTok, the test is going to fail. And then you're going to be there like, why did my test fail? And then I'll be like, come on, you should have gotten a creative. And so having creative that's specific to that platform, to that effort is so important. So we're thinking about TikTok, we're thinking about Snapchat, having that user generated content, that first person, really rough feeling content is key. And this is fortunately a lower design lift. So we are testing user generated content across our clients. And this looks like going on campus and talking to campus directors or talking to admissions folks, or if you can, talking to your students about what their life is like, having them pick up their phone and record it in first person in selfie mode like they're used to doing already. If you're feeling fancy, put some transitions in there, but start simple. And so having that creative foundation is really important. Now, if we're going to talk about just diversifying our creative portfolio and we can't necessarily get UGC, having high quality video is going to be the most important. So, video first is the strategy that we really believe in right now, for now and moving forward for the foreseeable future. Video outperforms static every day of the week. And then for display specifically, animated outperforms static. So while it's not full motion video, it does have some of that text animation as well. So, in general, if you can get UGC, that's going to be the number one. But if not, relying on that full motion video and that really high quality video as well.
I would just echo what Jenna said. And to the point where if you don't have UGC, don't test TikTok yet. Unless your institution is literally on fire, don't bother, because it's not going to work. The lack of genuine, trustworthy, sort of like heart to heart. That's what the audience at TikTok is expecting, is a genuine connection. And if you have stock photography flipping through slides or stock videography, going to be very clear as day. And it's going to hurt your brand, honestly, if you're not doing some of these like genuinely owned, recorded videography. And it's not a huge lift design wise, but it does take some coordination, some work. So I'm just going to echo what John said. And instead of like, try to do it, I would say like, no, you need to do it if you're going to test these new platforms.
Yeah, and the brands that do the best. So Miles mentioned, my research, I'm in my PhD right now. My research is actually focused in TikTok. And so I'm looking at how brands interact with their audience to grow engagement. And the brands that do it best follow trends. And I understand that in higher education, we have compliance teams that won't always allow us to jump on a song that's really just trending right now and we need to get content out tomorrow. It doesn't mean that we can't still follow popular general trends among our student demographic. And right now, like if you're thinking about your student demographic, you're pushing more into Gen Z. And yes, we still have millennials as a big base, but millennials, what we used to say, like the millennials is the kids, that's not really it anymore. Like we're reaching out to Gen Z now. And that's a very, very different target population than any population we've ever worked with. They grew up with ads. They see ads every day from the first iPad that they ever picked up. This is not going to be, you run a Facebook ad and it just automatically resonates. They need trust and they know how to see through advertising. So having that more authentic content, having that sillier content really does well. The brands that I'm studying are using humor to grow their engagement. So, using that humor and things that you already have and taking your phone and a resource that you already have and cutting a video together on your phone can be really quick and dirty, but it also can get you better engagement than if you're going to spend thousands of dollars doing a whole video production project.
Well, there you have it, everyone. 5 things in higher education marketing for 2023 that should be on your radar if there's not already. So, just a brief recap. We talked with Kiefer about the quote unquote sinking ship as Facebook, although we admitted it's not really sinking. It's just we're adding more ships to the fleet. And there's that importance of adding TikTok and Snapchat into your testing rotation and also leaning into the machine learning and artificial intelligence options within those ad platforms as well to really optimize all of your paid media efforts. And then Jeff took us down the data rabbit hole where we talked about the importance of building solid awareness measurement strategies and beyond the ad platforms, nurturing leads into email and other offline activities as well to really result in what everybody wants, which is enrollments. And then wrapping it up with Jenna here, digging into creative and the importance of high quality video content, but also user generated content that is specific to platforms so that you are making the most of time and resources invested and have your best chances of success with all of the advertising that you're doing. So, I want to remind everybody that this was just really a teaser into each of these 5 things, and you'll hear more from us on the Test Learn Grow podcast with episode specific coverage of each of these 5 things here in the near future. And you can listen to this back and all of the other Test and Grow content as much as you like, wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you later.